Hello again, and welcome along to Higgsy's Handy Hints, episode 2, The New You. So today we're going to be looking at how to configure your partner for Windows desktop to help you work more efficiently, to work more in tune with how you want to work. Most of us like to sit at a desk which is comfortable and well organised and aesthetically pleasing. So why don't we do the same with the software that we use day in and day out? So during this episode, I'm going to be taking you through the next 20 minutes or so to look at all the different configurability options available in Partner for Windows to help you get more out of the software and make it more easy and intuitive to use. So let's start with Startup. Seems a sensible place to begin. In your instance of Partner for Windows, you may notice when you first log in that several functions open automatically. If you don't need all or any of those, it can be quite frustrating to then have to close them all down before you start your morning's work. These are configured within what's known as the Workstation Settings function of Partner for Windows, so they're unique to you and can be configured to suit. You may need to ask permission from your administrator of Partner for Windows to help set these up, but to explain where they are and how to amend them, let me show you now. So in the File menu, Options and into Workstation Settings, and in here we've got a menu called Startup. Here we can see there are 4 options in terms of how your particular instance of Partner for Windows is going to open first thing in the morning. You can tick or untick these to suit. So the first one is the Entity Matter Profile. The second one is the Task List. So if you want to see a quick glance at what your tasks are for the day, that will come to screen automatically. The Digital Dashboard if you use it, and Time Manager, which is one of the many time recording functions available in Partner for Windows, and actually we'll be covering Time Manager specifically in a later episode. So I'm going to turn off the Entity Matter Profile, the Task List and the Time Manager, but I'm going to keep the Digital Dashboard. So if I OK that, the next time I come into Partner for Windows, the only function of those 4 things that will come to screen is the Digital Dashboard. And just to explain what each of those items are in case you're not familiar, so the Entity Matter Profile is this screen. So if that's coming up automatically each time you log into Partner for Windows, and you're doing that every time, you might want to have that switched off. The other one is the Task List. So again, if that's appearing each time and you don't use it, then it's easier to turn it off within the Workstation Settings. And then finally the Time Manager function, if I can remember where it is on the menu. I think it might be on View. Here we are, Time Manager. So if you find that Time Manager, this screen here, is calling up and then settling itself down onto the taskbar at the bottom, again, if that's not something you need or use, then you can switch that off within the settings function. So by doing those things, that will give you a more personalized experience when you first log in. So now that we've sorted out the startup options, let's have a look at how you can configure the desktop itself to suit the way that you work. So let's start at the top with the ribbon bar. The Partner for Windows ribbon bar is where you access most of the key menu options. However, you can choose whether you have it minimized, as I have, or whether you prefer to see it displayed permanently on screen, such as this. To make the choice, if you right-click anywhere on the ribbon bar itself, you'll see the option Minimize the ribbon. If I untick that, then my ribbon bar is now permanently in place whenever I use Partner for Windows. If you have it minimized, then it gives you more working screen, but whenever you select an option, the ribbon bar is displayed for you. This is my personal preference because I just prefer having the larger working screen available. In addition to the ribbon bar, we can also customize what's known as the quick access toolbar at the top left of the screen. You can see here. So by default, it comes with quick access to the Entity Matter Profile, the Case Manager screen and searching. But like any Windows application, you can add any number of additional features onto that quick access toolbar. So as for example, if you're working in the accounts office and you're responsible for approving posting slips, then to give you quick access to that, drop into the posting menu and on slip processing, just right click and say add to quick access toolbar, and that's posted there for you. Equally, if you want quick access to manual time recording, for example, then just add it to the quick access toolbar. So you can see now my quick access toolbar has been updated with those latest icons, and those will stay as part of your Partner with Windows login until you decide to take them off at another occasion. And to do so, simply right click and remove from quick access toolbar. Once they're in place, it gives you one-click access from that toolbar into the relevant function. So it's all about saving you time and making your experience more personalized to how you want to use Partner with Windows. Alternatively, you can open up the drop-down menu at the end of the quick access toolbar and go to more commands, where you've got the ability to drag and drop functions onto the quick access toolbar or remove them as required in a more generic fashion. Finally, you can decide where the quick access toolbar sits. Again, with the drop down at the end here, you can choose whether you show it below the ribbon, as in this position, or whether you show it above the ribbon, which is where I tend to have it set. Let's now have a look at the options with the Partner with Windows task panel on the left-hand side of the screen. For me, this is one of the best innovations that ever came into Partner with Windows, and it's really designed to help you get quickly and easily to key information throughout the system without necessarily going through the menu structure available. Let's start first and foremost with the visibility of the task panel. So whether or not you actually want to use the task panel is configured within the workstation settings. So if we just go back into that for a second, File, Options, Workstation Settings, and in here, if we go to the user interface, we will see it says Use Side Task Panel, and simply tick or untick whether you wish to use or not use the task panel from here. Once that's done, the task panel may initially appear in this sort of format, permanently docked to the left-hand side of your screen. So always available and always accessible. And that's done by courtesy of this pin here. So on my system now, that will always be in place. You can adjust the width of it just by dragging it out as far as you need to be. But by clicking on that pin, that is now a permanent feature. However, how I prefer to use it is to have it as a floating task panel. So again, it moves out of the way of the screen, giving me more working area. But when I need it, I just hover over it for a second and the task panel is then presented to me. If you haven't used the task panel before and you'd like to use it in the way that I do, just be aware that the first time you log in to Partner with Windows, you will notice that there is a delay of a few seconds by hovering over the task panel button before the task panel comes into play. And that happens every time you log into Partner with Windows, not just for the first time. So just be aware of that. It's only a couple of seconds and then the task panel becomes active. So within the task panel itself, let's have a look at the different functionality that's available. In fact, before we do so, I should also point out that if you inadvertently press the close function and lose the task panel, then to bring it back, if you go to the view options, there is a task panel button, as you can see here. Just retick that and the task panel becomes available. So if ever you log in and you find that you've lost the task panel, all you will have to do is go to view and make sure that box is ticked. Okay, so let's now look at the functionality that's available within the task panel. And you can see it's accessed by a number of buttons down the bottom left-hand side here. It will always open up depending on where you left it last time. So if I just go up to the top button first to look at tasks, as the name suggests, these are any actionable tasks set within the case management system that you should be aware of either today, or you can look at overdue tasks, which will be shown in red, future tasks, and so on. I haven't got any tasks on my system, but you'd see them all listed here, and any that needed to be actioned, you could right click to go into that particular client or matter. Entities Matters is probably the one that I use the most. This is where you can access a number of things. Let's start with the favorite entities, favorite matters. So you can decide which of the entities within your database, clients, contacts, whatever they may be, you want to mark as favorites. And by marking them as a favorite, they then become available in your task panel. So what that means is that by right clicking on this example here, we can go to any of the functionality available from the entity that you've selected. Okay, without having to go through menu structures or open up the entity matter profile. If you ultimately want to remove somebody from the favorites, perhaps you've finished with a matter and you no longer want to have it in your favorite matters, just click on the remove button and that will take it away. To add them into the favorites in the first place, If you're on the entity matter profile screen, then just simply click on the star alongside either the entity or the matter, and that will add them into your task panel. You also have favorite matters, which is probably the one that you would use the most often. So again, you decide why they're favorites. They don't necessarily have to be your matters, but they can be matters that you want regular access to. And by right clicking, again, you can access all of the key functionality available for working on that matter. So again, just a great time saver. More recently, we introduced favorite steps. So if there are particular items or documents within a case management file that you want to keep an eye on, perhaps a document that's going through various versions and you need quick and easy access to it, then very easily, again, you can go directly to the document from here or lead off into a number of functions available from that particular matter where the document is held. Recent matters is very useful, and there are, as you will have seen in the shortcuts episode 1 of Higgsy's Handy Hints, by using the F6 key in a number of areas throughout Partner Windows, you can invoke this same list. So recent matters, as the name suggests, are those that you've been working on most recently. The latest of those will always be at the top. And again, a right click will bring up that same matter submenu of all the functions that you have access to. Likewise, recent steps. So what case management action items and documents have you been viewing or generating most recently? And again, a right click will give you the ability to either go to that item or call up additional functionality on the back of that. Then we got the subscribed entities, subscribed matters. So this is a relatively new innovation. I think that came in version 6.3 of Partner for Windows, so probably in the last couple of years. So the idea here is that, slightly differently to favorites, if you want to be subscribed to an entity, or more pertinently a matter, that allows you to keep an eye on it. So if you're a team leader, perhaps, or there's a particularly important matter that's being worked on within your team, and you want to keep an eye on things, then you would subscribe to those entities or matters. Again, from the task panel, you can do just as you can with any other a favorite that you've selected, but also what it opens up for you is the ability to review effectively your subscribed matters. So these are my subscribed matters. So from the task list menu, I've opened up the case review panel. And if I just put this back a year, so it defaults to looking at the last week. If I just ask that to look at the last year across all of my subscribed entities and matters, it will bring up a list for me of anything that's happened on those case management files in that time scale. And you can see there's a whole heap of filters as to how you get to the information that you're looking to see on that. So that's where subscribe matters ultimately feeds into. Moving on to partner shortcuts. So the idea here is, as the name suggests, these are one-click shortcuts into key functions of Partner for Windows. It's not amendable. These are out of the box and standard. But again, if you quickly want to go and create a matter, bang, straight in. It's picked up the last entity that I was looking at in Partner for Windows. So BR04 in this particular case. Equally, if I want to create a new entity, it will bring up the blank create a new entity screen, as you can see there. Plus a number of functions. Clearly, if you don't have access to things like the nominal ledger because you're not working in accounts, then you wouldn't have the partner shortcuts available from this screen. You can view them as either as icons or as a list. You can order the way they appear and so on and so forth. Applications, very, very useful function. I'll keep it on screen. So the idea here is that you can configure links to applications on the system that's being used. So it could be a third-party application elsewhere on the network. It could be a function of Partner for Windows application. It could be a link to a website. It could even be a link to support to log issues. It's entirely up to you how those are configured and who they are made available to. But the whole point about them, again, is that instead of having to go elsewhere onto the network to call up the particular application or go out onto the internet to go to that particular research website, whatever it may be, then directly from here with a click, you can call up that particular function. Documents tab, this serves a number of purposes on Partner for Windows. So let's start firstly with the checked out of case. So if you're using Partner for Windows to handle version control, i.e. track changes on a document that's going through various iterations, if you have any documents checked out currently that you're working on, then you'll see them listed in this particular panel here. Equally, if you come to log out of Partner for Windows and you have documents checked out, the system will warn you before you log out that you still have documents checked out and whether or not you wish to check them back in. Post to review links to the post room partner functionality. So the idea here is that when items are scanned into post room and captured into post room, then there is the option to update the matter fee earners task panel to show them the post that's been received, typically today, but it could be over any period of time. So we can see here that we've got one document. If I right click on that document, I can go to Case Manager to look at it in the context of the file. I can mark it as read, so it no longer appears in my list here. I can mark it as read on the matter, or I can view the document directly from this screen here. Okay, all of which without having to go off and look at the case management file per se. Moving on to the alert. Oh, sorry, one more case review time. I knew there was one more there. So again, we'll look at this in a little bit more detail when we come to the time recording Higgsy's Handy Hints in a few episodes time. But here we've got the ability when we're in case management to have a little timer running. It starts automatically, and when you finally leave that particular case, as in close it down, then that timer will automatically stop. That time information is held here in the case review time area, and it's designed to be a prompt to suggest that there may be some time that you've spent today or yesterday that you haven't actually recorded. So this has no bearing on time that you may have already recorded in other ways, but it's just suggesting to you that there may be some matters here as a prompt that you haven't actually time recorded, but you spent time on them yesterday. So the idea here is that I can see 16 minutes was spent, admittedly some time ago on the 9th of December on this particular matter. If I right click on that, I can choose whether I want to record that time, in which case it will open a classic time recording entry for me. The only thing I have to update it with is the activity, but everything else is picked up as default unless I wish to amend it. Or I can choose to delete that time from my list manually. Also be aware that whenever a period end is run on your Partner for Windows system, i.e. the end of each month, then any unallocated time, which is more than 30 days old, will automatically be purged from your case review time folder. So useful adjunct to time recording, just giving you that additional prompt that you may have missed some time whilst you've been working on a case management folder. And then alerts at the bottom, this links to a number of things. So you've got the RTA portal, you've got things like InfoTrack, anti-money laundering. So any of those functions, if you're running them on the system, this is where any alerts from those products would appear within your Partner for Windows task panel. You have the ability to change the look of the task panel. So if you want more space, for example, to review your favorite list because it's become longer than the screen available, you can show fewer buttons as I'm doing here. You can remove buttons as well if you don't want them. So what happens now is instead of having buttons, they're all appearing as little icons at the bottom. So if I now go back to my favorites, or entities and matters, I should say, and choose my favorite matters, although my list isn't long enough, if you have got quite a long list, you've got more space to review them. But equally, if you want to bring them back, which I do, I'm just going to reverse that process. So it's up to you how many you have, or you can remove them altogether if it's not something that you would ever use. So if, for example, you didn't want to use alerts, you could say, I don't need that. OK, so that's the Partner for Windows task panel. Really, really useful. You haven't seen it before, then I'd encourage you to use it, whether you have it permanently docked or whether you have it sliding in and out when you've been using it, entirely up to you. The last thing I wanted to cover in today's session is the ability to change the overall look and feel of your Partner for Windows desktop. So if you're thinking mine looks a little bit different from yours, irrespective of the changes we've made to the task panel and the ribbon bar, then that's because I've chosen a particular style for the background of my Partner for Windows desktop. And where you can choose those is behind the options button at the top of the screen here. If I drop down to style, you can see there's a whole selection of Microsoft Office backgrounds that have been in use over recent years, up to and including 2016, which is really the point at which Microsoft moved to Office 365, and the background palette really hasn't changed much since then. So my system is currently set to Office 2016 Outlook. Until very recently, I was using Office 2016 Word, which you can see gives a slightly darker blue to the background panel. I still see a lot of Office 2007 Blue, which used to be my preferred many moons ago. And in fact, I was using this probably up until about 2017, 18. And it was around this time that we started to get a little bit of negative feedback about Partner for Windows looking a little bit dated compared to other systems that were on the market. And literally, I made this change when we got the new 2016 version available. And from that point forward, people's sentiment at demonstrations changed completely to it looks really modern and fresh and really up to date, because people were used to that look and feel with their Microsoft Office environment that they were using. More recently, we've even added different modules of Office to conform to. So if you are an Excel geek and you spend a lot of time in Excel, you might want it to look a little bit more like Excel. I'm not sure I'd want to sit in front of a green screen every day, but there you go. But yeah, I've just recently changed it to Outlook, quite like that softer blue than the dark blue I had before. And you can see how quickly and easily it is to change that. So experiment with that, see what you think. And once you've made that selection, that will then become your background palette until next time you change it. So it's saved beyond login. I should also just say that some of the things that I've been doing in this session may not be accessible to you as an individual user on the system. They may be locked down by your firm, and therefore you might need to speak to your Partner for Windows administrator. Certainly things like workstation setting changes, you might want to speak to them before making any such changes. But if you like some of what you've seen today and you haven't currently got your Partner for Windows Desktop set that way, then I would encourage you to talk to your Partner for Windows administrator to see if you can get your system configured the same. And hopefully, once it's configured this way, the system will then work a lot more in tune with how you want to work, and therefore make you more efficient as a result. So thanks again for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you again at the very next version. Just to remind you, there will be a document version of this presentation with screenshots, etc. So for those who prefer to read a document rather than watch a video, then that will also be available in conjunction with the release of this video. So thanks again, and I'll see you at the next episode of Higgsy's Handy Hints.